I stormed into the city of dreams, heart ablaze with visions of glory, only to plunge into a snake pit where ambition draws blood and trust is a loaded trap. A wide-eyed rookie, I believed my raw fire would light the path to greatness. Foolish. My first test was a slaughter. 20 predators in sleek dresses, their smiles razor sharp, eyes glinting with hunger. A venomous queen, perched high, sneered a single word that slashed my soul. Forgettable. Her mocking cackle was a torch, igniting my rage. That night, in my crumbling hideout, that word burned like napalm. Forgettable? I'd carve my name into their bones. At a glittering elite gala, I saw the truth. This wasn't a stage, but a battlefield where charm is a weapon and power the only prize. The queen wove her spell, ensnaring titans with calculated grace. I shed my naivety, forging cunning as my blade. Spotting a shadowed king, his presence a storm of dominance, I struck, my glance a spark, my touch a dare. Her glare screamed war. I was ready, but ghosts of my past clawed back, whispering secrets I'd buried deep. This city thrives on betrayal. It's a coliseum where every handshake hides a knife. Each rumor, each cold stare fueled my defiance. They thought they'd bury me? I'd topple their empire. On my balcony, the skyline pulsing like a beast's heart, I raised a glass to chaos. Let them call me ruthless. I'd play their game, break their rules, and watch their thrones crumble. The fight's begun, and I'm here to burn it all down. I never imagined that stepping into the glittering lights of Hollywood would mean stepping onto a battlefield. When I first moved to Los Angeles, I was just another hopeful face among thousands flooding into this city every year. I believed deeply and naively that my talent alone would pave the road to stardom. Yet reality struck hard and quickly, like a slap I never saw coming. My very first audition was for a minor role, a bubbly waitress in a romantic comedy. Easy enough, I thought. But when I walked into the casting office, confidence bubbling beneath my carefully chosen dress, my stomach dropped. 20 girls, each one more polished, poised, and stunningly confident than the last, filled the narrow waiting room. Every smile exchanged was plastic. Every friendly compliment laced subtly with venom. I understood immediately. This wasn't just an audition room. It was a silent war zone. Inside the audition room, the director hardly looked up from his clipboard. Beside him sat Jessica Stanton, Hollywood's newest rising starlet. Perfect hair, perfect teeth, flawless in every infuriating way. She scanned me quickly, eyes indifferent, and scribbled something on her notes. My palms went cold. "Whenever you're ready," the director mumbled. I performed, feeling suddenly small under their gaze. When I finished, the silence was suffocating. Jessica tilted her head slightly and smiled, a thin, cutting smile that conveyed more disdain than 1,000 words. "Cute," she whispered audibly to the director, "but utterly forgettable." I felt humiliation color my cheeks hot red. As I left, their laughter echoed softly behind me. Back in my cramped, dimly lit apartment, surrounded by unpacked boxes and half-eaten Chinese food, I stared at my reflection in the window. Forgettable? The word burned through my thoughts. Tears threatened to form, but instead of sadness, something else took root inside me, something colder, sharper. The next week, at an exclusive industry party my agent insisted I attend, I saw Jessica again. She stood confidently amid powerful directors and producers, laughing just a bit too enthusiastically, letting her fingers linger a second longer than necessary on their sleeves. A powerful producer leaned close, charmed completely by her manufactured allure. Watching her, I felt a twisted admiration rise within me, not for her acting skills, but for the way she played her audience so flawlessly. A realization crystallized in my mind. Jessica wasn't just acting in front of the cameras. She was playing a bigger, deeper game behind the scenes. Her power didn't lie in talent. It lay in control, in strategy, in manipulation. I felt my initial innocence die quietly in that very moment, replaced by a determination ruthless enough to compete. If I wanted to survive, I'd have to fight fire with fire. My eyes narrowed slightly as I raised a glass of champagne to my lips, tasting the bitterness of resolve mixed with ambition. No longer would I wait passively for opportunity. Talent might earn respect, but manipulation and cunning, that was how you earned power. I noticed a prominent casting director across the room. Squaring my shoulders, I adjusted my dress slightly, let a gentle smile curve my lips, and moved deliberately towards him, feeling every gaze follow my path. My game had officially begun. The night I set my sights firmly on Gunnar Blake, the room was a shimmering ocean of expensive suits, glittering gowns, and fake smiles. Hollywood parties were always full of people pretending they didn't care while desperately trying to impress anyone who mattered. And among them, Gunnar stood like a king on his throne, confident, untouchable, and undeniably powerful. I studied him discreetly from my spot by the bar, nursing a chilled martini. He laughed easily, surrounded by studio executives and high-profile directors who clung to every word he spoke. Power emanated from him effortlessly, commanding respect and envy from everyone around him. Exactly the kind of influence I needed if I wanted to rise to the top. I took a slow breath, feeling the familiar surge of adrenaline. This wasn't just another casual flirtation. It was a deliberate, carefully plotted move. I knew exactly what I was doing. As Gunnar briefly stepped away from the crowd to answer a call, I saw my opportunity. Casually, I slipped closer, timing my movements precisely. Just as he ended his call, I pretended to search for something in my purse, deliberately bumping into his side. "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry," I gasped lightly, touching his arm to steady myself. My fingers lingered gently for just a fraction longer than necessary, ensuring he felt the warmth of my touch. He turned quickly, irritation flickering briefly across his eyes, until he registered my face, softening into curiosity. "No worries," he replied, his voice smooth, charming as always. "You all right?" "Just embarrassed," I laughed softly, looking up at him through carefully lowered eyelashes. "Crowds and high heels don't mix well, apparently." He chuckled, his attention fully on me now. "I don't think we've been introduced. I'm Gunnar Blake." "I know who you are," I admitted, deliberately letting a shy smile form on my lips. "Amelia Rose." "Amelia Rose," he repeated slowly, recognition lighting his eyes. "You're starting to make quite a buzz around town." I feigned modesty, lowering my gaze slightly. "Hopefully for the right reasons." "Always good to be talked about," Gunnar replied smoothly, his gaze intensifying slightly. "So, what brings you here tonight?" I looked directly into his eyes this time, my voice steady, composed, deliberately intriguing. "Same as everyone else, I suppose. Looking for opportunities." He tilted his head slightly, intrigued. "Honest answer. I like that." From the corner of my eye, I caught Jessica Stanton watching us intensely. Her eyes flashed with suspicion and irritation. Seeing her discomfort made my next move clear. "I heard you might be casting your next big film soon," I said, keeping my voice casual but calculated. "I'd love a chance to read for you, if you're open to new talent." Gunnar studied me thoughtfully, clearly appreciating the straightforward boldness. "Ambitious, too. You really don't waste time, do you?" "Life's too short for hesitation," I answered firmly, deliberately letting my words hang in the air. "If you wait, someone else will take what should have been yours." He smiled broadly, appreciating my calculated boldness. "I couldn't agree more," he said finally. "Tell you what, why don't we meet later this week? We'll talk about your future. Here's my private number." As he handed me the card, I caught Jessica's sharp glare again, now openly hostile. I deliberately held Gunnar's gaze longer than necessary, silently confirming to Jessica that I was now officially competition she couldn't ignore. When Gunnar turned away, returning to the glittering circle of admirers waiting for him, I felt the first tangible surge of power course through my veins. The stakes were clear. Aligning myself with Gunnar meant access, influence, and control. Jessica's cold eyes narrowed even further as I raised my glass slightly toward her, a subtle toast signaling that our private war had just escalated dramatically. I sipped my martini slowly, savoring the burn as it went down. I'd made my move. Let the real games begin. On my first day at the film set, I felt the heavy weight of expectations. Stepping onto a major studio lot for the first time was surreal. Crew members bustled everywhere, carrying equipment, shouting directions, moving like a synchronized army preparing for battle. The buzzing of generators, sharp commands from assistant directors, and the hot glare of spotlights intensified the pressure simmering beneath my carefully maintained composure. Just as I settled into my makeup chair, I saw her, Emma Watson, strolling onto the set like she owned it. Her reputation was well established, critically acclaimed, notoriously professional, and equally notorious for annihilating anyone she considered competition. She was Hollywood royalty, untouchable, and painfully aware of it. Our eyes met briefly across the crowded makeup trailer. I offered her a polite nod. Emma returned it slowly, her gaze lingering a second too long, deliberately measuring me. The coolness behind her eyes said it all. You don't belong here. Minutes later, while the makeup artist was carefully retouching my lipstick, I overheard Emma's conversation with her manager just a few seats away, carefully loud enough for me to catch every word. Honestly, they'll give these roles to anyone nowadays, she remarked, her voice dripping with casual disdain. Connections, looks, anything but actual talent. Heat rose to my cheeks, but I forced myself to stay perfectly still. Emma was baiting me, publicly undermining my credibility, but I'd come too far to react impulsively. When filming began, the tension escalated rapidly. During our first scene together, an emotionally charged confrontation, I delivered my lines confidently, only to have Emma pause dramatically, cutting the momentum. Sorry, but Amelia, could you maybe give me a little more to work with here? Emma said, her tone deceptively gentle. You're a bit stiff, honey. Relax. The director looked uncertain, caught off guard. Embarrassment crawled up my spine, prickling like needles. The crew's attention intensified. This was Emma's territory, and she was reminding me clearly who held power. But I wasn't about to let her walk over me so easily. I appreciate the feedback, I said calmly, allowing a small, composed smile to appear on my face. Maybe if we run it again, you'll manage to keep up. A hush fell over the set. Emma's eyes flashed dangerously, surprise mingling with anger, but I kept my gaze steady, refusing to back down. After shooting wrapped for the day, whispers spread quickly across the crew about our on-set clash. While heading toward my trailer, I overheard 2 production assistants gossiping discreetly. Did you hear about Amelia and Emma today? One murmured excitedly. Amelia really stood her ground. I smiled inwardly, satisfied. Yet moments later, my phone buzzed insistently. I checked the screen, my stomach tightening as I read the incoming message from my agent. Urgent, TMZ got a tip-off. Anonymous source claiming you're difficult on set. Call me immediately. My fingers clenched tightly around the phone, frustration surging inside me. I looked up sharply, catching a fleeting glimpse of Emma stepping gracefully into her luxurious trailer. She paused briefly, turning back, meeting my eyes with a cold, satisfied smirk. In that instant, everything became crystal clear. Emma hadn't underestimated me at all. She had anticipated my move and countered instantly. This wasn't just rivalry, it was war, and Emma Watson was a formidable opponent. But I'd never been the type to surrender. Taking a slow breath, I steadied myself, quietly planning my next move. Hollywood wasn't kind to the weak or unprepared, and I had no intention of being either. Just when I thought the battle with Emma was enough to keep me on edge, a darker storm silently brewed beneath the surface, one tied to a past I'd worked hard to bury. The first indication came late one evening after a grueling day on set. Exhausted, I unlocked my trailer door and stepped inside, instantly freezing at the sight of an envelope taped neatly to the mirror. I reached out cautiously, heart drumming, and opened it. A single photograph slid out, landing softly on the makeup counter. My stomach tightened violently. It was a snapshot of me and David, laughing together on a rooftop terrace, the city lights glowing softly behind us. But the carefree joy captured in the image felt alien now. I flipped it over, my hands trembling slightly. In familiar handwriting, David's message was simple and devastating. "Did you really think you could erase me so easily?" Memories flooded back. David's face the night I'd left him for Gunnar, pale and broken beneath the harsh streetlights outside our shared apartment. I remembered how his voice had quivered, how his eyes had darkened as he whispered his final words to me. "Someday, you'll feel exactly how I feel tonight." I'd brushed it off then as mere heartbreak. Now I understood clearly. It had been a promise. Within days, subtle attacks emerged like calculated strikes. Personal texts leaked anonymously to gossip blogs, hinting that my relationship with Gunnar was purely transactional. Articles surfaced, thinly veiled, yet damaging enough to stir whispers among crew members on set. Each headline was a perfectly aimed blow, each revelation carefully chosen to chip away at my carefully curated image. The final confirmation came when my agent called in a panic. "David reached out directly to Emma Watson," she said, her voice brittle with anxiety. "They've been talking. He gave her screenshots of your old texts, ones that make it seem like you're manipulating Gunnar for your career." My fingers clenched around the phone, nausea rising swiftly in my chest. David had not only come back to haunt me, he had allied himself with my most ruthless rival. I confronted Emma directly after filming, catching her off guard between takes. She lifted her chin slowly, a mocking glint in her eyes as she noticed my agitation. "You seem stressed, Amelia," she purred sweetly, sipping her coffee. "Hollywood too tough for you." "Why are you doing this?" I demanded softly, struggling to maintain control. "What did David promise you?" Emma's smile widened slowly, enjoying the moment. Nothing I couldn't already guess, but he confirmed something important, that you have no loyalty, Amelia. People like you poison this industry. My jaw tightened as I fought to suppress the anger boiling within me. "You don't know me, Emma." "Oh, but I do," she said gently, eyes sharpening like steel. "David showed me everything. Maybe it's time everyone else saw it too." As I turned away, humiliation burned fiercely across my skin. Yet beneath it, something colder and stronger began to solidify. A renewed determination, sharper and more ruthless than ever. Walking back to my trailer, I realized the war had changed. David was no longer a wounded ex-boyfriend acting on impulse. He'd become a strategic enemy with a powerful ally. But he'd forgotten one crucial detail. I'd changed too. I wasn't the naive girl he'd once known. Inside my trailer, I calmly retrieved my phone, scrolling purposefully through my contacts until Gunner's name appeared. My fingers hovered briefly, calculating my next move carefully. If David and Emma wanted a fight, they'd chosen the wrong enemy. Because now I was done playing defense. It was time to strike back, harder and smarter than they could ever anticipate. The morning of the Academy Awards nominations announcement, tension hung thick in the air of my apartment. I paced nervously, heart thudding, fingers trembling slightly as I waited for the live broadcast. This nomination wasn't just an accolade, it was validation. It was power. My phone buzzed repeatedly, notifications stacking like bricks. Most were meaningless, except one from Gunner Blake that simply said, "Relax, it's yours. I've made sure." Relief surged, mixing with an uncomfortable guilt I quickly pushed aside. This was the game, after all. I turned on the television just as the announcer smiled brightly into the camera, and the nominees for Best Actress are Amelia Rose for Hidden Lies, Emma Watson for Lost Virtue. My heart surged triumphantly at my name, but the thrill soured instantly at the mention of Emma's. Her nomination meant one thing: the war between us was now on full public display. Days later, at an industry cocktail party celebrating the nominees, whispers of gossip floated freely among champagne glasses and diamond earrings. Emma stood near the center of the room, exuding confidence in a dazzling silver gown. Our eyes locked briefly. She offered a thin, dangerous smile. I returned it coldly, raising my chin slightly in defiance. Minutes later, a young production assistant approached nervously, handing me her phone. "You should probably see this," she murmured, eyes wide with concern. On the screen, headlines blazed with new accusations. Anonymous sources claim Amelia Rose bought nomination through Gunner Blake's influence. I felt the color drain from my face, blood turning icy. David's fingerprints were all over this. Across the room, Emma's quiet laughter sliced through my thoughts. She glanced at me, mock innocence dancing in her eyes, then turned back calmly to continue her conversation. Fury surged within me, powerful and sharp. I retreated quickly outside, dialing Gunner's number, voice shaking slightly when he answered. "They know," I hissed. "The media's already on it." Gunner paused, sighing heavily. "Emma's camp tipped them off, obviously. They're playing dirty. What do we do now?" "Strike harder," Gunner said firmly. "If she wants a media war, let's give her one." Over the following days, tabloids exploded with scandals, anonymous leaks, secret recordings, questionable friendships. For every accusation thrown at me, a damaging revelation about Emma surfaced within hours. It became a vicious, public war where truth was irrelevant and survival was the only goal. But Emma was relentless, always staying one step ahead. On the eve of the awards, I received another late-night message, this time from David himself. "Emma has the final card. Tomorrow night, it's game over." The vague threat chilled me to the bone, yet I refused to back down. Standing in my dimly lit apartment, gripping my phone tightly, I realized something crucial. This battle wasn't about a trophy anymore. It was about control, pride, and reputation. And in Hollywood, reputation was everything. Tomorrow night, at the most prestigious event of our lives, one of us would walk away victorious, and the other would be left shattered. I vowed silently that it wouldn't be me. The spotlight blazed down fiercely, bathing me in its intense glow as the entire auditorium rose, showering applause like rain. My heart pounded wildly. This moment was the pinnacle of every carefully orchestrated move I'd ever made. I stepped elegantly toward the stage, feeling the exhilaration of triumph surge through every fiber of my being. But suddenly, the deafening applause was shattered by the harsh screech of static echoing from the massive screen behind me. Heads snapped upward. Confusion rippled like wildfire through the crowd. Then David's voice, chilling, deliberate, familiar, resounded over the speakers, drowning the theater in stunned silence. "Before you crown Amelia Rose as your golden queen," he hissed, mockery dripping from each word, "let's see who she really is." A shocking, explicit video burst onto the giant screen, larger than life. There I was, undeniably me, tangled intimately with Felix, his lips pressed urgently against mine, hands feverishly exploring. Audible gasps of horror reverberated through the room, drowning me in waves of scorching humiliation. "No," I breathed desperately, my voice barely audible, trembling violently as the betrayal unfolded before hundreds of astonished eyes. But the assault didn't stop there. Another sequence appeared, recordings of my private conversations with Gunnar, every secret, every sordid detail about our calculated bribes exposed with merciless clarity. Chaos erupted instantly. Journalists sprang from their seats, cameras flashed furiously, and whispers escalated into outraged shouts. Shocked and judgmental eyes burned through me, stripping away every illusion I'd built so carefully. My gaze shot instinctively toward Gunnar, seeking his support. Instead, I saw him rise from his seat, expression dark with contempt, deliberately turning his back on me as he strode swiftly toward the exit. My heart shattered instantly. Before I could move, Emma Watson rose dramatically from her seat, voice clear and cutting as she pointed directly at me. "This is who you've been celebrating tonight, a fraud who manipulates everyone around her for fame." The crowd erupted in scandalized outrage, voices clamoring angrily. Security rushed toward the stage, but David's voice thundered once more through the speakers, silencing everyone momentarily. "Enjoy your empire of lies, Amelia. It's collapsing around you now." From across the hall, David watched with icy satisfaction, phone in hand, controlling every humiliating second of my downfall. Panicked, I stumbled backward, knocking into the presenter behind me. Security grabbed my arms firmly, pulling me away from the storm of flashing cameras and shouting journalists, away from the life I'd built, now shattered beyond repair. Backstage, I wrenched myself free, collapsing breathlessly onto the cold tile floor, hands shaking uncontrollably. My phone buzzed relentlessly, hundreds of messages pouring in, each more devastating than the last. Among them, one from Gunnar seared itself permanently into my memory. "You're finished. Don't ever speak my name again." My heart splintered completely as tears streamed hotly down my face, makeup running like ink down a ruined canvas. I sat frozen in the suffocating silence backstage, realizing bitterly that I was utterly and irreparably alone. In one electrifying moment, David had delivered his fatal blow, and it had landed with perfect, devastating precision. The scandal left me stripped, abandoned, and utterly alone. Overnight, the carefully constructed world I'd built collapsed into ruin. Contracts evaporated, calls went unanswered, and every glowing spotlight that once embraced me now felt cruel and blinding. In just days, I'd become Hollywood's most hated villain. Alone in the darkness of my penthouse, my fingers trembled as I scrolled obsessively through the endless stream of vicious social media comments. She got what she deserved. Fame-hungry fraud, disgusting. Hollywood's biggest fake. My chest tightened painfully with each hateful word. Despair, raw and consuming, gripped my heart. There had to be a way out, some lifeline to cling to. Then suddenly, in that darkest hour, a desperate plan emerged in my mind. A staged suicide attempt. Manipulative, dangerous, but exactly what I needed to swing public sympathy back in my favor. And I knew exactly who to blame. Claire, my ambitious manager. She'd been avoiding me for days, distancing herself carefully, cowardly protecting her own interests. Yet she was as guilty as I was, her hands just as dirty. It was time she faced consequences of her own. That night, I meticulously arranged the scene, scattering empty pill bottles and scribbling a tear-stained note implicating Claire. My hands trembled with a mix of guilt and determination as I finished, breath shaking softly. But as I stood there, a sudden, haunting memory surfaced. A flashback of countless times I'd coldly dismissed Claire's warnings, ignored her pleas, belittled her behind closed doors. I quickly brushed those thoughts aside. Survival demanded ruthless choices. The door creaked open softly, pulling me sharply back into the present. Claire stood silhouetted in the doorway, holding something tightly in gloved hands. "You never respected me, Amelia," she whispered bitterly, eyes narrowed into icy slits. Her voice was calm, disturbingly controlled. "After everything I did for you, building you from nothing, you plan to sacrifice me just to save yourself?" My heart hammered violently. "Claire, listen." "No," she cut me off sharply. "I listened enough. All your empty promises, your endless lies. Did you honestly think I'd fall for another?" She stepped forward, her face illuminated now by dim streetlight filtering through the blinds. Her expression was utterly cold, her eyes deadened by betrayal. "You've made yourself a martyr," she hissed softly. "But martyrs don't survive, Amelia." Before I could react, Claire lunged forward, violently shoving me backward. My head struck the marble countertop with a sickening crack. Pain exploded through my skull, vision blurring instantly. I collapsed to the cold floor, ears ringing with agony. She knelt beside me, voice dangerously soft as she wrapped gloved fingers tightly around my throat. Her eyes never wavered from mine, filled with a cold fury born from years of suppressed resentment. "You think you know betrayal?" Claire whispered fiercely, squeezing tighter, cutting off my air. "This is betrayal." Panic surged through me. My hands clawed weakly at her iron grip, breath ragged and desperate. Darkness crowded my vision, heart hammering erratically. I felt consciousness slipping, dreadfully aware that Claire had planned this carefully, methodically, down to her gloves, ensuring no fingerprints and the discreet back exit she'd undoubtedly mapped out. A sudden pounding erupted at the front door. Shouts, urgent voices. Someone must have heard the struggle. Claire froze, eyes widening briefly in panic, loosening her grip just enough for me to gasp a single, desperate breath. "Police! Open up immediately!" Claire's grip finally released as blue and red emergency lights flashed urgently through the window. She stood swiftly, eyes darting anxiously toward her carefully prepared exit. "You don't deserve this second chance," she spat bitterly, vanishing swiftly through the back door without another glance. Moments later, uniformed officers burst into the room, rushing toward me. I lay gasping painfully, throat raw, head pounding fiercely. The cold marble felt unforgiving beneath my trembling body as paramedics carefully lifted me, their urgent voices echoing distantly around me. As they carried me away, oxygen mask pressed gently to my face, my blurred eyes caught a final glimpse of Claire's abandoned gloves lying ominously near the countertop, a haunting reminder of the double-edged betrayal we'd both inflicted on each other. In my ruthless quest to control the narrative, I'd unleashed a monster I couldn't tame, and nearly lost my life to the darkness I'd created. My eyes opened slowly, assaulted by a blinding white glow and the sterile smell of antiseptic. Immediately, searing pain radiated across my face, forcing a sharp gasp from my throat. "Don't!" a nurse snapped anxiously, grabbing my wrist to halt my trembling hand. Her startled eyes flickered quickly away from mine, unable to mask her horror. Dread twisted my stomach violently. Something was terribly, irreversibly wrong. Ignoring her warnings, I grabbed a small hand mirror resting nearby, holding it shakily to my face. The moment my reflection came into focus, nausea surged fiercely within me. A long, grotesque scar slashed cruelly down my cheek, raw stitches slicing deeply into once flawless skin. My heart froze, in pure shock, chest tightening unbearably. "No," the whisper barely escaped my lips. Within hours, my disfigured face dominated every headline and tabloid in Hollywood. Claire's shocking arrest only intensified the media frenzy, but they painted me not as a victim, but as a ruthless manipulator, finally reaping what I deserved. Paparazzi stalked outside the hospital relentlessly, lenses capturing every humiliating detail of my new, grotesque reality. A reporter shouted mercilessly as I left the hospital, head bowed beneath sunglasses, desperately shielding my ruined face. "Amelia, does karma feel as brutal as you look now?" Those vicious words sliced deeper than any surgeon's scalpel ever could. Returning home, I opened the door to a haunting scene. Letters scattered across the marble floor like accusations, legal threats, contract terminations, crushing debt demands. Hollywood had swiftly turned its back, leaving nothing but ruin in its wake. Just as I closed the door, my phone buzzed insistently. Hesitantly, I glanced down, heart plunging at the unknown number. A text appeared ominously. "Still alive, Amelia. Enjoying your new reflection, Claire." My blood ran cold, fingers trembling as the reality struck me. Claire might be locked away, but her venomous hatred remained. Somehow, even behind bars, she'd managed to twist the knife deeper, ensuring I'd never escape the nightmare she'd left behind. Hours later, standing alone in my dimly lit bathroom, I faced the mirror again, my distorted reflection mocking me bitterly. Makeup, surgery, nothing could erase the brutal mark permanently etched into my face. This scar had become my legacy, a scandalous symbol of betrayal, deceit, and ruthless ambition gone terribly wrong. I pressed shaking fingertips to the cold mirror, staring bitterly at the grotesque image I hardly recognized. "This is your truth now," I whispered, voice ragged and broken. "You created this monster. Now live with her." In the suffocating silence of that moment, I understood with chilling certainty. Hollywood hadn't merely abandoned me, it had utterly destroyed me, leaving a scar deep enough to last forever. The penthouse was breathtakingly opulent. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased panoramic views of the glittering LA skyline. Priceless art lined the walls, extravagant chandeliers dripped crystals above plush carpets. But beneath all this manufactured beauty, the rooms held a haunting silence that echoed louder each day. I moved silently through the lavish space, a shadow of who I'd once been. On the marble table lay yet another gift, a heavy diamond bracelet, left carelessly in its velvet box beside an envelope thick with cash. My stomach churned bitterly at the sight. I once stood tall above Hollywood's elite. Now I was a secret, a hidden commodity for men too powerful and too ashamed to claim me publicly. Tonight's visitor had been particularly ruthless, hands possessive, eyes hungry, his whispered demands cold and transactional. As soon as he left, I'd scrubbed my skin raw beneath scalding water, trying in vain to wash away his lingering touch. But no soap could cleanse the disgust lodged deep within my bones. My phone vibrated sharply, breaking my painful reverie. Unknown number, fingers trembling, I opened the message, heart sinking immediately. Still enjoying your new life? Hollywood misses your talent, or at least your services. Emma Watson. I flinched violently, nearly dropping the phone. Even now, Emma twisted the knife mercilessly, taunting me from the pinnacle she'd ruthlessly stolen. Bitterness surged within me, white-hot rage mingling dangerously with despair. A sudden knock jolted me from my thoughts. Before I could answer, the door swung open confidently. A tall, silver-haired man strode in, his dark eyes sharp and calculating. He was new, a man introduced by associates who trafficked discreetly in secrets like me. He approached slowly, appraising me coldly like an expensive possession. "So you're the infamous Amelia Rose," he murmured smoothly. His fingertips brushed casually over the jagged scar along my cheek. I recoiled instinctively, eyes flashing angrily, but his grip tightened abruptly, forcing me still. "Don't forget your place," he warned softly, voice laced with chilling authority. "You lost the privilege of dignity when Hollywood tossed you aside." I jerked away sharply, rage igniting dangerously within me. "You don't own me." His eyes narrowed, a cruel smirk playing at his lips. "Don't I? You've already sold yourself. Don't pretend morality matters to you now." Without another word, he turned, tossing an envelope stuffed thickly with cash onto the table. "Be ready tomorrow. You'll be accompanying me publicly. Discreetly, of course. Consider it your new role." As the door clicked shut behind him, my fists clenched so tightly that my nails bit painfully into my palms. How had I fallen this far? Once a celebrated actress, admired by millions, now reduced to an accessory bought and controlled by powerful, ruthless men. Yet, even as humiliation burned fiercely through me, I felt a bitter resolve stirring deeply within. Hollywood had broken me, discarded me, but perhaps I still had one final act left to play. One last controversial twist, one defiant stand to reclaim a shred of dignity. Stepping onto the balcony, wind whipping violently around me, I stared coldly into the glittering abyss of the city below. They'd turned me into their darkest secret, but secrets, I knew, held tremendous power. Maybe it was finally time to expose Hollywood's hidden truths, no matter how scandalous, how dangerous, or how utterly destructive the fallout would become. The phone stood propped up against a stack of forgotten scripts, its camera blinking red. A single dim lamp illuminated the room, revealing my scarred face without filters or makeup, just raw truth beneath merciless scrutiny. My heart raced, but determination burned brighter. It was now or never. My hands trembled slightly as I tapped the live button. The screen flashed briefly, then red numbers rapidly climbed, viewers flooding in by the thousands. I sat alone, illuminated by the harsh glare of a single lamp, the raw scar on my face starkly visible, a shocking emblem of my fall from grace. "Hello, Hollywood," I began, voice chillingly calm. "Tonight, let's talk about the lies that built this city." Instantly, the comments erupted. Confusion, outrage, morbid curiosity swirling in a torrent of digital chaos. I leaned closer, eyes locked onto the lens. You see this scar? It's my punishment for daring to survive Hollywood's true face, but I won't stay silent any longer. Taking a deep breath, I began ruthlessly naming names, each revelation delivered with brutal precision. I exposed producers trading roles for sexual favors, executives manipulating award ceremonies, and powerful agents blacklisting actresses who dared to refuse their advances. Then, deliberately, I reached further. Gunnar Blake, the industry's golden boy, arranged and accepted bribes repeatedly, rigging awards and sabotaging competitors. Emma Watson, she not only knew but personally facilitated these arrangements. Suddenly, the live feed began exploding. Furious, terrified texts flooded my phone, industry insiders begging, threatening, pleading. My phone buzzed violently mid-broadcast, startling me. An unknown caller ID flashed ominously. Heart racing, I answered live, speakerphone activated. A distorted, threatening voice echoed clearly. "End this now, Amelia, or you'll be found dead tomorrow." I lifted the phone to the camera, my hand shaking. Did everyone hear that? They threaten me openly because they're terrified. Within moments, loud, insistent pounding reverberated at my front door. My heart slammed painfully. I spoke rapidly, urgently, addressing the viewers directly. They're already here, trying to silence me. But listen carefully, this live stream is backed up remotely. If anything happens to me, every remaining secret, the ones even darker than these, will automatically be released worldwide. The banging grew louder, angrier. The door frame shook violently. Turning sharply toward the noise, adrenaline surging, I shouted fiercely, voice trembling yet defiant. "You hear that, Hollywood? I'm not your secret anymore. I'm your reckoning." Just as the door splintered open, figures rushing in, the live stream abruptly cut out, leaving the audience staring into darkness, horror and disbelief rippling across millions of screens around the globe. In those chaotic final seconds, I realized fully the depth of what I'd done. I just unleashed chaos on the very world that created and destroyed me. My hands trembled slightly as I tapped the live button. The screen flashed briefly, then red numbers rapidly climbed, viewers flooding in by the thousands. I sat alone, illuminated by the harsh glare of a single lamp, the raw scar on my face starkly visible, a shocking emblem of my fall from grace. "Hello, Hollywood," I began, voice chillingly calm. "Tonight, let's talk about the lies that built this city." Instantly, the comments erupted. Confusion, outrage, morbid curiosity, swirling in a torrent of digital chaos. I leaned closer, eyes locked onto the lens. "You see this scar? It's my punishment for daring to survive Hollywood's true face, but I won't stay silent any longer." Taking a deep breath, I began ruthlessly naming names, each revelation delivered with brutal precision. I exposed producers trading roles for sexual favors, executives manipulating award ceremonies, and powerful agents blacklisting actresses who dared to refuse their advances. Then, deliberately, I reached further. Gunnar Blake, the industry's golden boy, arranged and accepted bribes repeatedly, rigging awards and sabotaging competitors. Emma Watson, she not only knew but personally facilitated these arrangements. Suddenly, the live feed began exploding. Furious, terrified texts flooded my phone, industry insiders begging, threatening, pleading. My phone buzzed violently mid-broadcast, startling me. An unknown caller ID flashed ominously. Heart racing, I answered live, speakerphone activated. A distorted, threatening voice echoed clearly. "End this now, Amelia, or you'll be found dead tomorrow." I lifted the phone to the camera, my hand shaking. Did everyone hear that? They threaten me openly because they're terrified. Within moments, loud, insistent pounding reverberated at my front door. My heart slammed painfully. I spoke rapidly, urgently, addressing the viewers directly. They're already here, trying to silence me. But listen carefully. This live stream is backed up remotely. If anything happens to me, every remaining secret, the ones even darker than these, will automatically be released worldwide. The banging grew louder, angrier. The doorframe shook violently. Turning sharply toward the noise, adrenaline surging, I shouted fiercely, voice trembling yet defiant. "You hear that, Hollywood? I'm not your secret anymore. I'm your reckoning." Just as the door splintered open, figures rushing in, the live stream abruptly cut out, leaving the audience staring into darkness, horror and disbelief rippling across millions of screens around the globe. In those chaotic final seconds, I realized fully the depth of what I'd done. I'd just unleashed chaos on the very world that created and destroyed me. The cheap motel room was cloaked in darkness, illuminated only by flashes from the muted television. Every channel screamed bold headlines that twisted my stomach into painful knots. Hollywood exposed. Amelia Rose Sparks' global scandal. Gunnar Blake calls Amelia dangerously unhinged, lawyers preparing lawsuit. Emma Watson hospitalized for panic attack after Amelia's explosive live stream. My phone buzzed furiously on the bedside table, its cracked screen lighting up relentlessly. "You're dead, Amelia. You won't make it through the night. We know exactly where you're hiding." I shoved the phone away, pulse hammering violently in my throat. Every shadow felt alone. Every creak of the building made my heart stutter in fear. Suddenly, headlights pierced the thin curtains, casting grotesque shapes across the peeling wallpaper. A black SUV rolled slowly through the parking lot, engine purring dangerously. My breath froze as I pressed myself flat against the cold wall, watching through a tiny gap in the curtain. Two dark figures emerged swiftly, faces hidden beneath hoods. They approached my door silently, pausing just outside. My heart nearly exploded, adrenaline surging through every nerve. A low voice growled harshly, "She's in there. Finish it quickly." I scrambled backward, panic electrifying my limbs. They pounded violently on the door, rattling the flimsy lock. "Open up, Amelia," a voice hissed savagely, laughter chilling and merciless. "Let's discuss your live stream in person." Shaking uncontrollably, I grabbed the baseball bat tightly, pressing myself into a darkened corner. The door splintered with a deafening crash as footsteps stormed into the room, shadows racing across the floor. Holding my breath, I closed my eyes briefly, heart drumming in my ears, knowing fully, tonight, either truth or darkness would finally claim me. The door crashed open violently, splintered wood scattering across the stained carpet. Two masked figures stormed into the room, their movements swift, precise, and lethal. The dim television still flickered, casting eerie shadows across the walls. My heart thundered painfully in my chest, fingers gripping the baseball bat until my knuckles turned white. "Come out, Amelia," one of them sneered, his voice a deadly whisper, filled with unmistakable intent. "You should have kept your mouth shut." Pressing myself further into the dark corner, I could barely breathe. Fear surged, then unexpectedly transformed into something else. Anger, raw and powerful, flooding through my veins. I'd spent my life running, hiding behind lies and manipulation. But now, cornered and terrified, a sudden clarity gripped me fiercely. If tonight was my end, I wouldn't meet it cowering in fear. As the first figure stepped toward me, a knife gleaming ominously in his hand, I swung the bat with every ounce of strength I had left. The crack echoed through the room, shockingly loud. He stumbled backward, cursing violently, momentarily stunned. Before I could strike again, the second attacker lunged forward, wrestling me down roughly to the cold, unforgiving floor. "Get off!" I screamed, fighting desperately. His gloved hand closed tightly around my throat, choking away my breath. Darkness blurred my vision, heart pounding frantically against my ribs. Suddenly, red and blue lights flashed urgently through the broken doorway, sirens piercing the chaos. The grip loosened instantly. My attacker stumbled back, panic flickering across his hidden face. "Police! Hands up!" Voices shouted sharply, authoritative and commanding. My attacker scrambled desperately toward the exit, but officers poured quickly into the small room, weapons drawn, voices shouting rapid commands. Within seconds, both men were subdued, cuffs clicking tightly around their wrists. An officer gently helped me up, concern etched deeply across her face. "You're safe now, Ms. Rose. It's over." As the adrenaline ebbed, I collapsed weakly onto the bed, trembling uncontrollably, tears streaming silently down my cheeks. But amidst the chaos and fear, a strange sense of relief filled me. For the first time, I'd chosen truth over fear, courage over deceit. It had nearly cost me my life, but for once I felt genuinely free. Truth had finally won, and so had I. 3 months after that horrific night at the motel, I stood silently at the fringes of a roaring crowd gathered outside Paramount Studios. Their voices thundered through the streets of Los Angeles, banners waving fiercely, "Justice for Amelia Rose," End Hollywood's lies. I watched quietly, hidden beneath sunglasses and a hoodie. The crowd's reaction to my presence was polarized. Some saw me as a hero, a courageous whistleblower, others as a manipulative fraud craving attention. The air was electric, charged with rage, admiration, confusion, and contempt. A young woman suddenly noticed me, her eyes wide with recognition. "Amelia," she shouted, breathless with excitement. "You're a hero! You showed us the truth." Immediately, an older man spun around, furious. "Hero? She's a liar. Just another actress pulling strings to manipulate us all." The crowd erupted, splitting into chaotic factions, arguing violently. The atmosphere spiraled out of control as police swiftly moved in to disperse them. I slipped away quietly from the chaos, returning to the tiny apartment that had become my sanctuary. My phone vibrated sharply as I entered. Another anonymous message flashed across the cracked screen. "You think you've changed Hollywood, Amelia? You haven't. They'll just replace old puppets with new ones." I stared numbly at the message, feeling its bitter truth seep into my bones. Sitting at my desk, the laptop screen glowed softly, illuminating my latest manuscript's bold title, "Everything Hollywood Doesn't Want You to Know: Inside the Industry Built on Lies." My fingers tapped resolutely on the keyboard, words appearing clearly, decisively. I was part of those lies. No matter how much I reveal, Hollywood will always find new ways to shield itself, but I refuse to be their puppet any longer. Outside, the chants slowly faded, but their echoes lingered stubbornly. A sad, ironic smile touched my lips. Hero or villain, brave or manipulative, I had forever changed how people saw this glamorous industry, and that was the price I willingly paid, no matter how deeply controversial it remained. Thank you all for watching this video. Please comment and let me know what you think about this story. Please like and subscribe to watch more great content on my channel.